Hey everybody, Jeff Basinger here, Chief Marketing Officer and partner in crime to Mr. Alan Basinger, our fearless leader over here at GDW Inc. And very excited and glad to have you here on part 2 of a kind of a lunchtime, if you will, mini series of webinars that we're doing all about sourcing. In fact, we're calling this our sourcing mini camp. This series of webinars that we're doing here. I know we had a really bang up one last week. I know that it was intensified and amplified massively by you guys' questions. In fact, we intended these to be, shorter, very deep, content-rich, very specific topic-based webinars. And, I think we went about 45 minutes to an hour, and then you guys just started asking the questions, and we went another, I think it was 45 minutes, almost another hour. So, you guys are really making these webinars, and you've always made our webinars that much more impactful for you, for us, for your peers by asking the awesome questions you guys are asking. Speaking of that, one quick little housekeeping thing. If you would like to ask a question on this webinar, what we do is we do it through the questions section on the GoToWebinar control panel. We found that if we open up the lines, it just leads to challenges, feedback, your headset not working, your dog barking in the background, things like that. So we don't open up the lines on here, and it helps keep the flow and things like that. So if you haven't been on one of our webinars, then you may not know that what you need to do is as soon as you have a question, don't wait. We don't want you to forget it. We want you to get it answered. There's a question section in the GoToWebinar control panel, and just once you know it, like Danielle and Veronica have already jumped in there. Hey guys, hey girls, I should say. Type it into that section, and it's at the appropriate time when we get to the Q&A, we will absolutely answer that question for you. If for some reason this is a lunchtime thing you're doing yourself, especially if you're here in the States, and we go past an hour for some reason, and you've got a short window, and we don't get to your question, we are recording this, so we will, number one, answer your question. Number two, if you do have to jump off for some reason, or if you missed part of this, we will be recording this, and we will post a link. And Veronica, yes, last week's is available as well. So with that, for those of you, because I know we have a big audience here, I know we have an international audience, and I know we have, I'm already seeing some people on here that I don't recall seeing, like Mahendra coming in from India. Hey, man. I have not seen on the webinars before, so just really quick, and then I'll get out of the way. For those of you who don't know Alan very well, Alan Basinger is our CEO and founder here at GDW Inc. Very great man, very centered man, very grounded gentleman, but has also been very successful in e-commerce. In fact, has over 16 years of e-commerce and retail, online retail and digital retail experience, which if you think about e-commerce itself, it hadn't been around that much longer than 16 years. So you've got one of the pioneers here that you have access to, and has pretty much seen about everything. A great family man, and lives outside of Austin, and just has a huge passion for helping you grow a long-term sustainable e-commerce business regardless of the economic climate. So anyways, I'm going to get out of the way and bring on Mr. Alan Basinger. How are you, buddy?
Good, man, good. It's been running around today. It's kind of fun. Anyway, we're having a good time, getting ready to go through some great information, and I see a whole lot of old names on here. Man, people I have not seen in a while. Mr. Ali G. What's up? Old school. Man, you're talking about some of the old guard. Ali. Traveling man. So good to see you, buddy. Chad Miller, I haven't seen you in a while either. Good to see you. Some of you guys are old school. Jeff and John, what's up, guys? How's it going, Mark Levin? Nam, what's up with you? I see you guys out there. And Veronica, of course, B. What's happening? Hey, so anyway, I mean, you guys in the old school have watched us grow and watched us go through the growing pains and seen a lot of the war and know a lot of the war stories and have been through all that, because every business has growing pains and challenges as they grow, especially if they grow extremely fast. And if we look at the history of GDW as a third-party logistics company, helping people with sourcing and logistics, it started about the end of 2015, the last, I would say, last couple of months of 2015, we went out and offered it to a few people in one Facebook group, few people, and that was it. And we did fairly well. We were able to keep customers happy, did a lot of good stuff, and most of the people we worked with were intermediate sellers. We talked a lot about scaling. It was things that we were going through in our company, or we had recently gone through in our company, that we were able to resonate with people who were just starting to hit that space, and we were able to help them out. So it worked out really well when we started doing that. And then we decided that we would start doing these sourcing trips. And because I had been going to China, I didn't like using Alibaba. I couldn't scale the way I wanted to scale, and also the prices were more expensive. I found that you weren't able to compete in the market correctly, and and when you look at Amazon, and I'm going to use Amazon as the main example, but when you look online in e-commerce, period, but when you look at the major large volume sales channels, you'll notice that the #1 seller of a product that has held the BSR ranking and has had the most volume and does the most sales tends to be the lowest priced product, more times than not, especially in competitive niches. And the reason they can get that is because they know what we call winning on the buy. And the way you do that is by buying direct. And there's a few other things. I want to talk about some of that stuff in here when we talk about different ways you can pay your supplier. But we learned about winning on the buy a while ago and had been going to China for ourselves and bringing our own products in, but we hadn't been doing it for anybody else. Well, once we started GDW and started doing the FBA prep for people, we decided we'd offer a few people to go with us on the trips. Little did we know what that was going to bring, and it was an exciting time. It brought an avalanche of customers, which, well, I mean, I wouldn't even say an avalanche because that's not even the case. Last year, we took less than 100 people total for the whole year in 4 trips. We averaged about a little over 20 people a trip. So really, it didn't. It brought in that many people, but what we didn't expect was how much product and how fast we would need to grow, and what that meant to people who needed to pay for their supplies and how to handle that. It was a very, very, very quick, hard, and painful lesson. So we've been giving those lessons away to help other people so that you guys can avoid those interesting challenges. Business is nothing but challenges. They just come. It's how we handle them and continue to move forwards. If we let the challenges stop us, we're sure to fail, but if we learn from the challenge and move forwards, we'll do well. And those of you who've listened to me before know I talk about iterative improvements, and if you look at every trip that we took people on last year and the improvements we made, and then the way we're handling trips starting this year and the improvements we've made, you'll know that that's definitely true in my business all the way. So there are a lot of headaches when you got to deal with paying with suppliers, especially when you have multiple suppliers coming from different regions in China. There's a lot of different ways to pay, and of course, I don't know about you, but trying to secure your funds in a way that can be as successful as possible is important. So we're just going to go through a few of those types of ways to pay it. This is a real short lunchtime type webinar. It's really informational. to help you out. I don't have a whole lot of pictures in this one. I got more content. So you can do things like international credit cards, and I know that we had this happen to us last year quite a bit. Members who came with us to China or who wanted to order products from China and have us handle covering the payments, asked if they could do credit cards. Well, none of the suppliers, very, 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 very few, will accept a credit card as a payment. China is a cash society. For the most part, everything they do is cash and wire transfer. It's direct money transfers. They don't do much anything on credit. They buy their cars in cash. They buy their homes in cash. They rent their warehouses for the year and pay the whole year in cash. There's no such, they really don't like debt, at least in my experiences with the people that I know and the vendors that I've worked with. It's not really something they want to do. There are some things that can help you do that, but they generally aren't going to take a credit card in most places. Some of the computer accessories and technology companies selling through e-commerce websites are able to do it, so AliExpress and things like that, you may be able to do it, but when dealing directly with the manufacturer, it's very rare that that's going to happen. They're generally not an option. You can use them when you're traveling. You're not going to use them to buy food very often, except for maybe in the airport. You may be able to pay for your hotel. If it's a larger brand hotel, they may be able to pay for it that way. But when dealing with the factories, it's just not there. And it's because it's a high-risk option for suppliers, and they run on such thin margins. If they get a chargeback on a credit card, it's really expensive. They have to fight it. It's just not really good for an economy that runs on cash. And so we've got customers who are not happy that in the beginning when we first started, we didn't accept credit cards. It was PayPal or money. That was it. And they didn't like that much. It wasn't as convenient for them. And Western society is more acceptance of credit cards. It's an acceptable payment method. And with the size of our transactions and the nature of international trade, we really didn't want to do the credit cards because it was a risk to suppliers and a risk to us to make it viable. Fraud is in both directions. So, I know we want to use a credit card to try to pay for something to protect ourselves from fraud, but fraud actually happens in both directions, surprisingly enough. When I started buying from China, it was very easy to get free samples. They never asked for money. If you just said, hey, I'm really interested in your product, I'd like to take a look, can I get a sample? They were glad to ship it out. And that wasn't a problem at all. But due to a lot of fraud and a lot of people just going in to get the freebie all the time and not really being serious buyers, the Chinese learned really, really quickly, and you find that those free samples aren't free anymore. You have to pay for them. They generally ask more money than what they would if you bought them, and you have to pay the shipping, which wasn't the case 15, 16 years ago. Any seller that takes credit cards also has to add the fees, and the margins, again, get squeezed so thin that when you look at a 3, 4, 5% fee, it just doesn't even work. So it's not a preferred method. Even though the security benefits are generally for the buyer, the seller doesn't really get that, and the Chinese generally don't want to move in that direction. So your next form of payment is Western Union, and it's second only to PayPal as far as the preferred mode of payment for samples, mostly. When I look at Western Union, it's small payments, little bitty things, things that you don't want to have to risk. I would never Western Union a large amount of money over to a supplier. They like it, but and they still do a ton of business with Western Union. I mean, a lot to do it. It's about the same risk as a wire transfer, but you pay to an individual. Once it's transferred over there, there's not a whole lot you can do with a wire, and we'll talk about that in a second. At least you have a bank account and a business, and it helps you confirm some legitimacy, where Western Union allows people to hide. So it's not a really good form of payment. But and as I noted in the second thing, it's the preferred method of payment for fraudsters and small fly-by-night companies or individuals. So when you read scam stories, it's usually Western Union that they're talking about. And generally, if a supplier is asking for payment by Western Union, it doesn't mean they're dodgy, but they can be, and you can always suggest an alternate method of payment. The little smaller suppliers, the little one-man, two-man shops that are just trying to get started, and there are a ton of them. China has more cottage industries than anywhere else. I know that recently I saw some advertisement talking about 26 million small businesses in the United States. I think there's 26 million small businesses in Shanghai and China. So it's like every person has a business and a job, and is very busy. So there's a lot of small businesses there, and they may not have the wherewithal, they may not have the experience to be able to use something else, but they're familiar with Western Union and it's really easy to use for them. So, and they get their money almost instantly, and that's really important, along with low fees. Whoops. So Western Union can be good. If I was going to use it, I would only look at what suppliers that I've used multiple times before that I trust, maybe only for little small sample shipments. So hey, I need you to overnight a production line sample if you're going to get a production line sample of your product. Pre-production, which I do frequently, it'll be make a run, please send me a pre-production sample. I've talked about that a lot, that I always look for a pre-production sample sent to me, which basically is the first one off the line. I want to see what it's going to look like, what the finished product is supposed to be. And then if it's a large run and I'm buying a lot, I'm going to get a mid-run and a later run sample sent to me as well, so that I can see how the quality stays on the length of the run. And that depends on the product, but that's generally a good rule of thumb that I try to use. And usually if I'm going to do those samples, I'm going to send them the money in a quick and easy way. Western Union is one of those ways that you can do it. Cash is big, and although their banking is growing up, they have serious challenges in China with their banking. It isn't as grown up as ours, although a lot of Western banks are over there trying to help keep them moving forwards. They did recently get added to the IMF, so they have to take care of their dollars, their money. So they need to make sure their cash isn't as volatile. But that's generally one of the big challenges that they have. But it's also a benefit for us. And we have to look at it like this. And we'll talk about that in a second, but generally cash is accepted because they do everything in the country in cash. And when they make money, they use it to buy products and goods inside their country. So they prefer not only cash, but they prefer cash in their currency, which would be the RMB or the yuan, which is basically the same thing. So paying in cash works. Importers, exporters, sourcing companies, agents, it's basically everything. But the beauty is that cash, especially in their currency, offers you the best prices. If you tried to pay, and I've done this initially early on, they would ask me how I was going to pay them, and I would tell them US dollars because that's my banking and everything I have is in RMB, or not in RMB, it was in US dollars. So I would just wire over US dollars. What I realized was, because I learned this from one of my suppliers, is that they have to charge me more in US dollars to hedge against the daily fluctuations in RMB. So they need to be able to ensure that they're getting the correct rate for that deal. So they quote me based upon the RMB value, the RMB in that day, and the dollar against the RMB. Let's say one day that dollar against RMB is 5.8, and the next day it's 6.5. All of a sudden, there's almost there's a 0.7 RMB difference in the pricing. So they kind of hedge it if you don't pay in RMB. If you can pay on RMB, then you can definitely push your numbers down a little bit and actually get yourself lower pricing. So it's definitely a benefit to do that. If you can set up a bank account in like the Hong Kong bank, or any of the banks that can do business in RMB, and you can put your money in China and have it so that you can pay the suppliers in RMB, it's definitely beneficial to you to be able to do it. But again, cash is risky, right? Cash is risky because once the cash is gone, it's really hard to do anything. China's weird, and some of you guys know this. China, basically, once they got the cash in hand, it's done. You know, you want to try to get the cash at the same time. You try to want to pay out at the same time you receive your goods. But it works really well if you've got a trusted source on the ground to accept the goods, verify quality and quantity before payment. Sourcing agents, some of them are really good about this because they can take your US dollars and convert it and pay in RMB and get you the better pricing. So there's some benefits to being able to do that. Again, you know, if you have your own bank account, you can do it that way, but there are sourcing agents, if you have one in China, that can help you to do that as well. Basically, you know, suppliers will definitely take cash, especially low-tech home goods. High-tech industries, on the other hand, generally may not want to work in cash, although I've done some strange, and it's kind of weird whenever you go and you have 80,000 US that converts to, you know, was that 480,000 plus or 500,000 yuan, and you got that in cash to go do a transaction. It kind of is weird because we're not used to doing that here in the United States. You do that here, and it's like, watch out, you're going to ask for some trouble potentially. But I've done it. But you know, larger volume stuff. Factories in the Guangzhou region that do electronics. I've never done a cash deal in any electronic product that I've sold. Generally, that's straight up just wire transfers, at least in most cases. Small trading companies, sourcing companies, things like that, definitely going to be cash based. So to help you on the cash side, one of the things that you can do is that you can have them quote you in RMB. Make sure you let them know that you're going to pay for it in RMB, and that because, again, like I mentioned earlier, their expenses in RMB, RMB price removes the need to build in that buffer. And so ask them to quote in RMB, and that'll make it happen. And then, you know, you can always pay based on the currency day's exchange rate. And I've actually had that come in my favor because they quote in RMB while it's at 6.5, and then I actually transfer the money and exchange it when it's 6.8. I actually get a benefit. So you can make that happen. If you don't hold RMB in your bank account because you don't have that, you can avoid having the buffer inflate the price if you do it that way, and if you find yourself a sourcing agent or someone who can make that happen. It removes the risk from the seller, but still, if you have the risk as the buyer. So, you know, very few of these methods are going to help you alleviate the risk from buying in China. It's just there. You know, you try to do your best to do it, but you never 100% get away from it. Going direct does help that. In many ways, and finding and working with a trusted agent on the ground there also helps. And that's, you know, that's interesting because you can have someone who's very well trusted that you've worked with over and over and over again, and eventually, you know, you don't know what happens, that trust goes away. So you don't want to, you know, you just need to always do your diligence and be careful. And be smart how you arrange that stuff. For example, you know, if your RMB takes 3 months to produce and you agree to pay in RMB or in USD at the day's RMB exchange rate, because they're going to quote it based on the RMB exchange rate that day, right? If the exchange rate changes, the risk can be on your side. It could move one direction or another, but because the International Monetary Fund is recognizing Chinese money, the exchange rate is being tightly controlled, and the fluctuations are pretty small now. It's not as big as it was even just a decade ago. The exchange rates moved quite a bit. So the beauty is right now the RMB is depreciating, so we're getting a great benefit. We were at 6.9 We were at 6.5. So it's pretty good. It's not going to be super high. Hopefully, if they don't inflate, we'll be able to enjoy the benefit of continuing to buy products super cheap. But, I don't have a crystal ball. We don't know what's happening. I had a lot of people ask about, Donald Trump and what's happening there. I don't think a businessman is stupid and would make stupid mistakes. May say stupid things because they're not professional politicians, but I know the Chinese government is very it's very important for them to keep their money viable, and so it definitely helps out. So if you have the opportunity to hold RMB money in an RMB bank and be able to pay for it that way, or you work hard and find yourself a good and reputable sourcing agent who can help you with sourcing your products and covering payments and accepting your products and things of that type for you to help you get the benefit of the win on the buy. That's definitely a good things to do. It definitely, paying helps you to avoid having that built-in buffer. It does reduce you to that account. So if you can set up an account in RMB in your home country, that'll do it. If you're available to make that happen. If your orders are large, look at setting up a Hong Kong company or even an entity in China. I think it's a Hong Kong National Bank, which you can do RMB and you'll be able to make payments from that. So you can make that happen. Anyway, if the exchange rate is not attractive, there are companies that will accept your currency on behalf of their clients, and then they pay the clients in RMB. You can make that happen. So they can make it happen across the board. So there are companies you can work with that can help you with that as well. And they'll make the payment on your behalf. The companies everybody's happy. Now, PayPal is probably one of the most popular, and I know that a lot of gurus out there talk about using PayPal, use PayPal, use PayPal. Thing is that PayPal it's popular for eBay and some websites for the most part, but it's still not necessarily a great way to make payments with Chinese suppliers, because although PayPal is supposed to protect us, they really don't do a very good job unless they're tied into something like eBay. There's some challenges with that, and you really need to look and read through their terms of services and their PayPal buyer protection and get an idea of exactly what all has to happen to have that protection, because most of the time a Chinese transaction with the type of invoicing and record keeping that's done generally doesn't fall within that. I use PayPal, but generally what I'll do is I'll only use it again for things like samples, and even most of the time they don't want to do it because PayPal's fees are high and the likelihood of a chargeback on PayPal is extremely high. But I generally agree to pay the PayPal fee, so I end up adding like 3 to 4%. And so I don't really use it on the larger transactions at all, just on the small ones, right? And that's it. Plus, you get a currency conversion fee, and so the suppliers really don't like it. And the buyer protection policies, especially for international transactions out of China, is really hard. You're not going to win. I've lost money early on when I first started. I tried to do everything with PayPal. We sold on eBay. We had a lot of money in PayPal already, so it was really easy to do. But we definitely were burnt a few times off of Alibaba and using PayPal to make payments. And we're unable to get not only refunds or replacements on bad products, but get the money back from PayPal. So, and that's it. And then I already, one of the interesting things is also that the PayPal accounts were private individuals. Most of the ones that I worked with were actually Hong Kong registered companies, so they weren't even mainland China. So they may have been sourcing companies for the most part who were sourcing out of mainland China, bringing it in and reselling it. So the prices were actually a little bit better. All right, sourcing companies are agents. This is primarily what I do today. I have sourcing agents that I work with in China. I can place orders with them. They'll go and find the product. They'll make sure that it happens. They'll make sure samples get shipped to me. They'll make sure that I approve it before it gets moving forwards. They make sure that any files, formats, logos, or things that I need get to the manufacturers. And they pretty much are your feet on the street in China. And I would say that all of mine, I've never run into one that wouldn't do it. They would probably have to be really small, but all of the ones I use actually will handle the payments as well. So what I do is get a PI from them, and then once the product is ready, because they received the product in China for me, once the product is received in their facility, they send a sample to me. This is probably a place where a lot of people fail. Once the product arrives in the warehouse, I ask them to send a sample to me. They DHL the samples. I get the samples in hand. It shows me what the product looks like that's being delivered to me, and if there's a problem, I can fix it right then and either cancel the order or go ahead and make the payment at that time. That's definitely one of the biggest benefits of having a good sourcing company or sourcing agent, is that you can do cash on delivery and you can deliver the product to them, and a good sourcing agent will accept it. They'll take a sample out, check it, take photos, send you photographs, overnight a sample to you, and then you can forward the money the next day, and then they'll pay the supplier. So really, really good benefit. It's worth the percentage. Generally, they work on a percentage of the total price of product that you purchase and ship. So having them do that is really good if you can make that happen. We've done it a few ways to make that happen, but basically your existing sourcing agent would play that role. You want to ask them if they can do that, because if you can get them to make the payment on your behalf or accept the product cash on delivery, when the product arrives, they get to do a spot check. Usually they don't do a real inspection, so don't expect them to do a real inspection. What they'll do is a spot check. They'll look at how many cartons came. They'll look at your order from the supplier. They'll make sure that the number of cartons on the order matches the number of cartons that you got. They may open a few cartons, check the product, and take some photos to send you, but they generally aren't going to count it. They're generally not going to inspect it for quality. Those aren't what sourcing agents do. You want to hire an inspection company if you have a product that needs that. But they can handle this role very well, and it's really good. A lot of suppliers will accept this because it's a local Chinese address, so very few of them have a problem. We generally don't see very many problems at all. Here and there they are, but generally, if that's the case, it's probably not a good company you're dealing with, because any of the larger ones will not have a problem delivering locally for COD. So I use that a lot. Online escrow, a lot of people talk about that. We're going to talk about a couple other things. Online escrow, a lot of people talk about it. It's kind of a challenge. Not very many people take it. Now, if you're using Alibaba or AliExpress, the Alipay escrow is great. You can definitely do that. It's not such a true escrow in my experience. It doesn't seem to be, but you definitely have the backing of Alibaba. They're a huge company, and they're working extremely hard to ensure that the reputation of their site and their escrow is very well. But it's kind of like the equivalent of an LC. An LC is a letter of credit. And we'll talk about that in a minute, because letters of credit are great. When you have a large supplier and you're working with it, it's definitely a way you want to go, because it can help you keep from burning cash, allow you to receive the product before you pay for it. There's a few other good benefits for that, but you're not going to use a letter of credit for small stuff. Generally, you're going to have to work with a bank. Your business needs to be established a little bit. But the Alipay escrow is good. There are quite a few other escrow-based companies that are out there. We've used a few to allow people to pay us, to pay TDW for services and shipping and things like that using an escrow account. There's some benefits to that for sure, but the dispute resolution process not so great. I know I had a dispute with a buyer using the escrow account for Alibaba, not Alipay escrow. Not really great to deal with. The suppliers tend to be a little bit better and treat you a little more legitimately when you do that. But if you're going to do an escrow account and you're going to make a buyer or a seller responsible for the shipping and everything, it's also your responsibility to ensure that you are extremely detailed in your contract. And you need to set up a buying contract. The Alipay escrow will actually force you to do that. You need to be extremely detailed as to what is acceptable, what's the allowable variance, what's the tolerances, what is exactly supposed to be delivered, and how everything is exactly supposed to be done. If you are not the type of person who will say exactly what font, what color, how big the font is, and exactly where it's located on your product for them to print it, the color code for the type of color that the product's supposed to be painted in or whatever, and all that kind of detail, if you can't put that kind of detail down in a contract, then it may be a challenge, because you really want your orders and your details to be, or your contracts to be that detailed in order to be able to win on an escrow claim or any type of claim. You want to end, in this case, it's not only me, but I bought from Alibaba. I used the Alipay escrow, set it up. I did not do a good job being detailed in the contract that they kind of auto build for you whenever you fill out the web form, and I ended up with $3,000 worth of junk that I couldn't sell, because they could prove that they sent me the products, but there was no proof that the product was different from what I ordered. And that's really where I see the biggest problems across the board, basically for anything and any buy, whether you're buying direct, whether you're buying from a sourcing company, a manufacturer, or whatever, is that and I would put myself into that, end up not being detailed enough as to what we need to do in order to protect ourselves. If you want recourse to go back, you need to have a specific details on the product, the logos, the packaging, how it's packed, how it's case packed, how it's shipped, variances, breakage, all of that. You need to be able to think about all of these points and make sure that it happens. So if you don't do that very well, you're going to have a hard time getting any kind of repayment from the escrow. Thus, you lose the value of the escrow. So, most cases, suppliers, a bigger customer probably will do it. I have a large textile manufacturer in China that I have worked with for quite a while, and we do large buys from them. I initially started out with them doing escrows, but I have enough business and have done enough business with them that they're generally on time most of the time, not every time. The product's good, and they have messed things up, but they've made it up, and they never made it up by giving me a refund. What they've done is given me discounts off rebuilds mostly. Those are the kind of things that I see are more common. Once you can get them to agree that they made the mistake, and if you're not detailed enough in your orders to be able to point out those mistakes, then in Chinese, for the Chinese, that's your fault, not theirs. In the U.S., we used to have a saying, it was buyer beware. In other words, it's the buyer's responsibility to make sure that their contracts, their orders, and the details of everything that they're getting ready to agree upon are understood and known and documented. And if the buyer doesn't do that, then it's the buyer's fault for being stupid that they got ripped off. Now, some of you may say, no, it's not my fault. How can it be my fault? You have to put the details down. That's the way China works. It's actually the way most of the rest of the world work. And the U.S. used to work that way when I was a kid, and all the way through my 20s, we worked that way. This is a recent phenomenon of entitlement that we have here today. And as far as I'm concerned, the only thing you're entitled to is breathe air and live. It's your own responsibility to ensure that you're not taken advantage of. So make sure that you have the documentation. Make sure that you're detailed. And this is just across the board. It's not just for online escrow. It's any order coming out of China, because we've all made that mistake. And I will put it that way. We've all made that mistake, and it was our fault. We were not detailed enough, asking the right questions, making sure the correct details are in place, and understanding that happened. I can tell you, I went to Iwu, when was it? It was the July-August trip in Iwu, and I bought about $60,000 worth of bags that I had made, and I had to sit there. It took a half a day going back and forth with the manufacturer, sitting there with the manufacturer, going back and forth, ensuring that the design was appropriate, ensuring that they understood how I wanted it sewed, what kind of zippers I wanted to happen, what the material needed to look like, how that material was going to happen, all the way down to how close they cut the thread at the end of sewing something. That's the kind of detail, how it was packaged. Those of you that are on here, quite a few of you that have been to China before, you go and buy the product, you buy it, it's going to come in boxes, and they say it's going to come in, and what we hear is poly bag, because they don't have a word for cellophane. Or a lot of times it's OPP, and that's the cellophane bag, which is not a poly bag, it's a cellophane bag. Poly bags are approved by Amazon, cellophane bags aren't. Poly bags have strength, rip resistant, tear resistance, cellophanes don't. If cellophane bags work, they can, but when you end up getting a box of goods and they arrive and they're all in cellophane bags and they're not sealed and they're not Amazon compliant, then guess what has to happen? They have to be packaged. So making sure you have the details to say, I need these in a poly bag, not an OPP bag. It needs to be sealed. It can't have any holes in it. It needs to have this language on it as far as the choking hazard. The more of those details that you can do in your order when you get doing this, the more you protect yourself against problems, the more things like PayPal and escrow can help you, and the less likely you're going to have challenges, or it's going to cost you more money to have your product repackaged and ready to go into Amazon. So anyway, that's pretty much that one. Hopefully you can decide whether or not you like that one. Letters of credit is probably the best payment method out there. The great part about the letter of credit is when you're buying $50,000 or more worth of product directly from a manufacturer, not from a supplier, and it's a good company, then the letter of credit can help you out. But it does cost money. The banks charge you, because they're basically saying that you're credit worthy. You're probably going to need to have, you may need to secure it with assets. There's a lot of paperwork at the bank to put it together. Some banks just aren't going to do it. They're not set up. That's not what they want to do. You need to have the right person at the right bank to be able to document it, put everything together, make sure it's compliant, and will work and make it happen. The first transaction and the first time you do it, it's like pulling teeth, but once you get it together, it's very good for you guys that are larger buyers that are buying single orders from in excess of $50,000 from true manufacturers and not sourcing companies or import-exporters. This works very, very well. It will secure things. There's some definite benefits to it. So larger companies will do that. The smaller companies aren't going to be really happy with it. Generally, they need to have a good banking relationship on their side. They probably need a legal team, and your small to mediums aren't going to be so happy with it. So this works really, really well with larger companies, well-established companies that are used to working with companies like Walmart or any of those big companies. That's really where it starts to come into play. So if you're fortunate enough to have a relationship with one of those type of manufacturers where you can go in and present a letter of credit to be able to make those kind of purchases, great, right? It opens up a lot of options, financing options, guys. And anybody here who's on this right now knows that selling online, e-commerce, once it starts to be successful, you have to feed the beast, and the beast wants product. You got to put inventory on the ground. You have lag times in getting the inventory manufactured and then shipped to you. So you end up having a lot of capital tied up in product on the ground. It's really easy to eat up all your cash. So the number one most important thing you need to do is protect your cash by not giving it away, working very hard not to give it up. So the more successful you get, the more cash you need, the more cash options you need. I know, I'll be honest, right now I'm actually going through that process because our e-commerce is continuing to blow up. I have 2 new e-commerce accounts, Amazon accounts that we launched the last quarter of last year. And both of those are starting to blow up. They're starting to do really well. So, you know, when you got something that in 4 months goes from 0 to $25,000 or $30,000, you know, you start to see some things happen. And when it starts going to $100,000 and $200,000, or in some cases $300,000 or $400,000 a month in sales, you're starting to move a lot of product, especially if it's lower dollar product. You're moving a lot of volume of product. So it's really good to start to learn how to get those financing options. One of the things that letters of credit, you probably want to be a little more established. That will definitely help you out. Large and medium-sized companies, again, this works out really well. Foreign-owned trading companies, good. Little small companies, they're not as comfortable. Again, there's a lot of cottage industries there. So if you're working with a small specialty supplier, cottage industry, it's not going to work. But if your growth has grown that big and you're buying that much product, you probably aren't working with one of those little companies, because the little companies wouldn't be able to handle your output or volume. So it may be beneficial for you to move there. One of the other things you can look at when you start looking at needing financing options, and we can talk about that, is if you're in the U.S., you can look at the small business. Hello, SBC. Hello, man. Anyway, the U.S. has opened up. Small business loans are becoming available again for a while, at least 8 years prior, and probably more like 12. It was really hard to get an SBC loan, but the SBC loans are opening up. That's definitely something to look at. If your business is established, you're going to do better. Brand new businesses need to have a lot of documentation. They need to really show it. You better put together a business plan with all the details in order to make it happen. If you're established, it's P&Ls, bank statements, corporate history, credit ratings, and things like that. They're going to get you there. You can also look at unsecured lines of credit, which is it. We're in the middle of that right now. I've got a $250,000 line of credit that we're going through. We've probably got another week or two that we'll open that up, because we need the cash to be able to buy product to feed the beast and keep the monster growing. So, and then our favorite, the one that we all probably do, the TT, wire transfers. So international wire transfers, basically you're gonna transfer the money to them via a wire. Now, one of the things is, in the beginning when we first started, I know this happened to me when I first started and we were buying online, generally most of our suppliers asked us to make a deposit, right, an advance payment before they produce anything. Now that I've gone to China a lot more and I see how things work, and I've worked with a lot of the suppliers, very rarely is there a requirement for an advance payment in China if you're sending to a local Chinese address and you're paying in RMB. The only time I've seen that happen is sometimes you have to pay for what they call a mold charge or a plate charge or something like that if you're customizing. That's normal. You pay that in advance, they go have it made, and then they start running your product. But very rarely are they going to ask for like 30% down. And what I found is the companies that are asking for that really aren't the manufacturer. Those are intermediates. They're sourcing agents or import-export companies that go out and find suppliers. I call it Alibaba arbitrage if you find those guys on Alibaba, because basically they pretend to be manufacturers. They get you to buy it. They get you to put 30% down. Then they go to the real manufacturer. They pay that 30%, which pays for the whole product, and they make killer margins on your deal. So you generally don't need that. If you find yourself a sourcing agent and you can accept the product in China on a Chinese address and pay for it, and the sourcing agent will pay for that product for you in RMB via COD, generally you're not going to need anything. You'll be able to do a wire transfer once you know your sourcing agent has the product in hand. And generally you ask them to give you proof of that. The risk in paying in this way is well, the risk of paying a deposit and then finding the product is junk and not paying the balances, you lose a lot of money. Or paying the deposit and finding out that you just paid 60 to 70% more than what the product actually would have cost if you bought it direct. That's kind of a risk as well, and not really winning on the buy. But you know, you pay the deposit and then you decide you don't want to do it. And we've had that happen. Actually, you know, those of you guys who may be interested, I have a substantial amount of product from customers who got ready, put their money down, and lost interest in moving forwards and didn't pay the balance. And it's sitting here and they're looking to liquidate it. I'm going to put that list up if you guys are interested in buying any of that. Send an email to or PM Jeff off of Facebook, just PM Jeff or me, and let us know, and that way we can put a list together, because what I'm going to do is put a spreadsheet together and send it out to anybody who's interested in that, because this really does happen. We've seen it happen on our side, we see it happen on the Chinese side too, and they just don't want to do it, and they don't care if they lose any money, and they just look to liquidate and get out. So it happens a lot, and so, you know, some of these sellers in China, and we've seen them in the EU market, some of these sellers that are there will try to shift the stock to other buyers. They'll put it out there. If it's a really unique product, then they're stuck with it, and they eat it. And so that's why customized and unique products tend to ask for higher deposits. If you have a good relationship with that supplier, that doesn't happen. I know the first time I went and did custom bags, they did ask for 30% down, and it was a custom bag. I was able to get out of there with less than 30% because I didn't have that much cash on me, because it was a cash transaction. So I was able to get out with a little bit less than that. I think we were at 15 or 20%. But the second time I ordered, there was no deposit. The third time I ordered, there's never been a deposit after that. So once I developed the relationship, that wasn't the case. Suppliers, it's their most popular payment method. It's pretty standard for them. When you do send money via wire, you need to be aware of what the currency exchange is. Also, you need to be aware of the bank fees, not only in the wire fee, which, like in my case, an international wire costs $30. To receive a wire cost me $12. And any wire within the U.S. is like $12. So it cost me, or 12 or 15, I don't remember right off the top of my head, for a U.S. But if I send it international, it's immediately $30. And then there's a fee for converting U.S. dollars to local currency. So there are some online brokers that are faster, and they move your money really quick. It's pretty easy to use them. You get better exchange rates in most cases, and you don't hit up with the crazy fees. But you know, it just depends on what's more beneficial for you. I actually use a cash management software. It allows me to manage all my businesses and all my bank accounts under one deal. Easy to move money around, easy to report on things, because if you've ever done a wire, they don't tell you who sent it. They only tell you that you got it. Kind of a pain. Anyway, that's pretty much it, guys. Hopefully how you can master working with suppliers is part of the next step, but these are just things that we hopefully can help you out. It's our Sourcing Mastery training program that we got. we really hope that we're starting to create what is going to be the definitive mastery program in sourcing. We find a lot of people talking about selling on Amazon. We find a lot of people talking about selling e-commerce and things like that. But there are very few people that are really going into much depth and detail when it comes to actual sourcing. Not only just the good things running around with their pom-pom saying source for me, but also talking about the challenges like getting burned for thousands of dollars and not doing a good job being detailed enough on our orders so that we end up getting not what we expect. The fact that our mind envisions one thing, but the details on the paper don't translate that, and we end up getting what's on the paper in most cases. Recourse in China, because we do wire transfers more than anything else, you really want to make sure that you're detailed in that case. And when you start getting into larger orders and working with larger suppliers, you want to make sure that you have a contract, and that contract states all of that. What happens if they deliver late? What happens if they ship late? What happens if they have too high of bad products coming off the line? You definitely want to look at inspection, all those kind of things. So we're going to go over a lot of this stuff, detailed, kind of one subject at a time. That's what the Sourcing Mastery training program is going to be about. It's a 4-week virtual class, or a boot camp, if that's what some people like to call it. We're going to do 2 weekly webinars. One's going to be going over the subject, because there is a lot of information, and I don't know about you, I'm getting old, but 4-hour webinars, I'm wiped out at the end of a 4-hour webinar. So we're going to do 2 a week. One, we're going to go over the subject, and then the second one, we're going to hold off for Q&A. And the reason we want to do that is because a lot of times I've given out some of this training webinars, like this one I'm doing right now, and you guys will consume it, review it, and then later on you're asking the question because it starts to click. And you start to see where it may apply to your particular situation. So we're going to break them up. It's going to be two a week. We're going to try out class one day, Q&A the second. If that doesn't work out, we may just split the information. We may double it up. But we'll definitely be flexible. We want to try this format. The format seems to make sense. Again, iterative improvements. What I'm trying to do is look at ways we can improve giving you the information and also being able to answer the questions for you. They're going to be recorded in case you can't make it, so you're going to get it. You'll be able to access it. As you know me, I hate death by PowerPoint. Instead, this is over-the-shoulder demos. Some of the guys who are on the latest trip to China have experienced that, and we learned that. Well, I mean, in reality, what we learned was, like I said earlier, we originally started this company. We worked with intermediary to larger volume sellers, and we worked to help them scale. So I didn't have to show them how to find keywords or build their listings or that kind of stuff. That was the first trip. The second, we only did three trips last year, so 3 trips with people. And the second trip, there were way too many new people who had no clue. And we weren't prepared to handle that. And by the third trip, we realized it, and we started making the shift. And the fourth trip, which was January of this year, this one is completely different. It's been working really, really well. So for those of you who don't do it, I went over and listed one of my products. We went over how to research the keywords, how to develop the keywords, how to organize the keywords. We went over how to structure the listing, the difference between features and benefits, how to do descriptions, the high quality content. Went over how to use HTML in your description, which HTML tags are available, and what I do and kind of my system. I use a standard operating procedure when it comes to making listings, how that works, kind of the methodology to make it work, how you can spy on your competitors to help you make really good listings from day one, how I use pay-per-click and when I use pay-per-click. We went over how to do that, how to build the pay-per-click. It's basically everything. We'll go over photographs, how that works, all the checklists, we're developing a whole bunch of checklists and worksheets and tools that we are going to give you guys. So you'll have a sourcing toolbox. You'll have your checklist for finding your suppliers. You'll have your checklist for creating your listing. You'll have your checklist to make sure you have everything you need to do the job. Are your keywords right? Is your title right? Do you have everything together? Are you ready to launch those products so that you can have that standard operating procedure together? So basically, you're going to get my SOPs on and on creating the listings, managing listings, things of that type. So we're putting together that sourcing toolbox for you guys. You'll be able to use it every time you source. It's a private Facebook group. It's going to be only for your class. A lot of people who are in this class, we're going to work together. So we're going to have 4 weeks of working together, asking lots of questions. So we're going to be able to continue to work together. We find that small groups work really, really well. We have the large Facebook group for everybody, but small groups of people that have been through the same classes tend to work better. But as we improve the class, as we improve our tools, you'll definitely be able to get access to that. I've limited it to only 30 people because that's kind of my limit. I've done live deals, live training with people. I find that 20 to 30 works really well, but once I go over that, it's just not, people don't get as much out of it, and it's harder for me to be able to give everybody a good amount of time, and that's really what I want to be able to do. So that'll make it happen. That way you get attention, instructions, and the answers you need, and we're going to virtually go over this stuff together. So you can get registered for the class. It starts real soon, March 6th. And you can just take a look at it. It's gdwinc.com/SMTP. Why is it Simple Mail Transfer Protocol, Jeff? That's an acronym.
Yeah, after we created it, I was like, man, this is not going to be a tech class. I hope nobody gets confused.
Yeah, I hope nobody thinks we're going to teach them about email. So,
hey, one thing I wanted to mention really quick, I didn't put it, we didn't put it in the slides because I didn't know exactly where we were going to be, but you offered up something the other day, I think it was on the Facebook group, that I thought was really, really generous about doing a one-on-one consultation, one-on-one strategy session, for the next 10 once the boot camp is over, because they're going to need that to really help bridge some of the gaps into moving forward.
It was the first 10 people.
Yeah, exactly, first 10. And I just wanted to mention, because I was kind of waiting to see what the numbers were. We have a couple of those left, so I just wanted to tell you, because I said I would update you on that. So we have depending on where we were.
What I offered,
we got a couple of those left.
Yeah, basically, guys, what I offered was the first 10 people who signed up, I was going to spend one-on-one time with them. We would do one-on-one consultation, look at your listings, look at your processes, look at whatever you want to look at from a business perspective. We can look at it. And I can just go in and help you look at critiquing it. I mean, I just did that for Inga Nielsen, who a lot of you guys know from the Facebook group, who's come and helped us at a couple of events in China. He goes there and sources, and he's helped guide a few of you guys around. He's also going to be in Thailand with us again. And I got Inga. I showed him one trick, basically one over-the-shoulder deal after reviewing his listings. Showed him the one thing, he implemented it, and within a week it added over $1,500 in sales to his bottom line, and that's actually increasing the one product that he took and we launched just recently for him. He's already selling out. He's selling about $1,000 a day in that product. So it is tearing it up. I've really went back to the old school way. He started Amazon. Once all this launching crap was done, and Amazon changed the term of service, and you found that the launches weren't necessarily as effective, and there weren't people being able to buy just massive, large quantities of reviews. It really has been beneficial to just get back to the basics and do a great job with keywords, do a great job with your listing, and do a good job launching that product and understanding how Amazon works. I actually show you how Amazon looks at your business, your listing, or any listing, and determines to give it traffic or not, and what can affect that, how it can be affected, and show. And also, one of the interesting things is I've been able to see a consistent trend in how long it takes to get a product really solid and launching and make it move now, which was more along the lines of what I saw in 04, 05, 08, especially 08 and 09. What we saw as far as the length of time and what kind of effort it took to get a product going. But I can actually show it to you because I have the data, and I can show it again and again and again. And what I see is a consistent theme that works out. So I've been able to take what I see from a data perspective and studying that data and create and adjust our standard operating procedures to be able to launch products consistently over and over again. And I think we've done a really good job. Our products that are launching now are doing extremely, extremely well. I'm very, very happy with it. We've changed the way we do pay-per-click, and when we do pay-per-click, there's a lot of good information that's going to come out of this class. And anybody who gets to spend time with me, Jeff, I forgot exactly even how much time, Steve. So you'll have to remind me on that one. But definitely, I think there's a couple more people who can get in, and we'll get that one-on-one time. And then we also are putting together a little award program for the Facebook group. So those of you that are in the Facebook group, what we want to do is get more people to be engaged. I see people asking questions, and I really don't want to be the only one answering all the time. We don't want to spam. The Facebook group's there to help each other, and it's there for us all to help each other ask questions and learn. It's not there as a customer service deal for GDW. We have a phone, we have email, and we have private messaging that we can do that on. But the main group is for us all to work together. So what I want to do is help get some engagement and get some other people helping out. So we're going to do some programs where we're going to offer up, I don't know what, an iPad mini or something like that, to the most engaged and helpful person in the group over the next month. We're going to start that at the beginning of March. So and then it's going to be tabulated not by us but by you guys in the group. So you all will definitely you guys will have a big input as to letting us know who you feel was the most helpful person in the group. And we definitely appreciate it. And those of you that are helpful, those of you that do help other people and do that, we definitely appreciate you guys too. So hopefully this was good. Thank you for the lunchtime event. We hope you have a good one and you found this information beneficial. Let's see if you guys got any questions that we can do it.
There's a couple on there.
Hey, Jeff,
Yes,
Jeff
sir.
Ebersol, I see you missed one last week. It should be right there in the Facebook group. The first one, these little lunchtime webinars like this, they're in the main Facebook group, so hopefully you're in that main Facebook group. Daniel Corona, yeah, I saw you kind of had to drop off and then you pop back on. He asked what an RMB is. That's yuan. That's the currency in mainland China. And John Roche wants us to all to know, thank you, John, that today the currency exchange for US dollar to RMB is 6.87, so almost 6.9. Pretty good. Thanks, man. Glad this is helping you guys out. Tanya, I appreciate it, man. I just want to make sure you guys get good information. Daniel wants to know about sourcing companies. I would give you some names, but I'll be honest, I'm in between a little bit, and we're working hard on that. I do have a couple of sourcing agents who work for me to help with manufacturing relationships. But as far as sourcing companies, we're actually testing a couple of new ones out now, and if they do really well with our product, then we will let you know. Timothy Archer. Oh, customization? That's a good idea, man. Tim Archer asks if we can put together something on customizing products. I don't see a problem with that. Jeff, make a note, please, and remind me. I have no problem with that at all. I've customized quite a few. We'll go into custom packaging and different packaging options and kind of the things you need to know and talk about. If you have any details on that, Timothy, just give us some PM Jeff or me and send me some details on kind of what you're talking about, because there's a lot of ways to do it. But we can go over and put something together that kind of gives you guys an overall viewpoint on that. We're doing something on we're definitely doing something on packaging now. We want you guys to learn more about packaging, because that seems to be one of the biggest challenges we see on a regular basis in products coming in from customers, is that they're just, although we can help people package, and we really appreciate it and we want to do that, but we also want to show you how you can do a better job getting your packaging straight as you start to improve your product. And also what GDW does from a packaging perspective, so you have a better understanding of what we can do it. Mr. Ali G, buddy, my football bud, best way to apply for unsecured lines of credit. Yes, actually, you know, we did a thing on that in China, and we did it in one of our masterminds, Ali, about how to get $500,000 worth of unsecured lines of credit for your business. It's business lines of credit. I've used my personal money to start this business. The company actually owes me about, well, a lot of money. Let's just put it that way. The company owes me a nice big chunk of change because I funded it personally to get it started. But as it's grown up and moving forwards, I've built business credit with vendors and leases and things like that. So now what I've done, and considering my corporation is a little bit older, but if you've got at least 2 years of business and you can go backwards and you've got 2 years of credit of tax filing, you can pull a good P&L and a balance sheet if you use something like QuickBooks and you manage your accounting at that detail level, and you can pull out good numbers. Then it's really not that hard to go out for small business lines of credit. Just at a high level, to let you know, it's real simple. You apply for $50,000 or smaller lines of credit. Go for the low stuff. They have less scrutiny. You have to jump through less hoops, and it moves a lot faster. So you go for $10,000 to $50,000 seems to be kind of that magic number. Ask them what they have available and pick the lowest one. Bring all your paperwork. Make sure you have it all together and it's accurate and good, and then go and apply. And yeah, you want to apply for 4 to 5 at a time and do that for 30 days. So each week you got 4 to 5 loans that you're applying for each week for a month. And at the end of the game, after you do 20 or 25 loan applications, hopefully you end up with about 10 of them, and you can be somewhere in that $500,000 worth of unsecured lines of credit. Unsecured, you don't want secured loans, you don't want them talking into secured, you want unsecured. That way, if your business does take a tumble, it doesn't take you with it. Trust me, I know I'm trying to get all of the stuff I have out of my name as much as possible because it's important. And your company you want your company to be able to survive you. It's called you know, if the key executive gets hit by the bus, what happens? And so you try to build and structure your company as it's growing and getting larger in a way that it survives without you. At least that's the way I look at it. I know a few other people build businesses that way. Small mom and papa shops, if the person who runs it gets hit by a bus, that company will die. If you put people, processes, and systems in place, and the company is an entity upon its own with its own credit, and you have good people that work for you and run it, that thing can run without you. And that's the real goal of owning a big business, at least in my point of view, is not having to be there every day, all day, unless you really love it. But I know one day I'm going to want to retire. When, I don't know, but definitely one day.
Hey, Alan, I wanted to jump in real quick because Timothy asked about this too. The podcast episode that we did that all about that with Alicia and everything is episode 19. So if anybody wants to go listen to episode 19 of the podcast, they will
Alicia
get all those details.
Yeah, Alicia Chum-Gillis, you can go check it out. We did a podcast together. She had great ideas. I mean, I went out and I think I had $240,000, $250,000 line of credit, generally within about a year or two of starting the company, and I had to sign over my firstborn, give up a kidney. It took months. It literally took months to get everything together. They would go to the people, the underwriter, and the underwriter would come back with questions, and then I had to come back with documents and explain the questions, and it was back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. And that took a long time. Alicia's version is great. It was really just a stroke of simplistic genius that I really, really appreciated, because it's just, boom, get in there, get those lines of credit, get them unsecured, go for the low-hanging fruit, but do it 10 times. You know, if you can get $10,000 lines of credit unsecured on your business, you have $100,000 in lines of credit, and you're talking revolving lines of credit, not term. Revolving means you can use it, pay it back, use it again, pay it back. Generally, they do have an expiration date, or you have to renew them every year. Some of them don't. That just depends on which bank and what you're getting, but definitely stuff that can help you out moving forwards. Thanks, Jeff, for chiming in on that. That's good. Tim also asked about the cash management software. Generally, when you start having multiple accounts, you have retirement accounts, you have checking accounts, savings accounts, personal accounts, multiple business accounts, things like that. Instead of having to log into the interface that most normal people log into to get access to only one account and only be able to do things or deal with money on one account, some banks offer a cash management type option. You actually pay for it, but it allows you to get in and get the big picture and pull reports on everything that you have happening. But one of the other benefits is it has actually dual factor authentication. You have a key fob to be able to get in it. You can actually initiate wires yourself, although the bank wires are still manual, guys, so I hope you know that. If you are looking for a wire, I've actually have someone who I'm trying to wire them some money, and they sent me just the routing and the transit information. Well, that works for an ACH, but it doesn't work for a wire. Especially today, the government's getting really funky and the bank regulations are stupid, and it's still a human being that does a wire. So what happens is I fill out a wire request. It goes to the wire department, and if it ain't right, they call me on the phone, or well, generally they call me on the phone until they can get me. If you don't get the right information to them, they cancel the wire and they won't send it. Usually the problem is you have to have the address of the recipient, not just the recipient's bank. So if you don't give me, if I had to wire money to you and you just gave me those two pieces of information, I could try to initiate the wire, but they would fail it most of the time. I need your information, your bank's information, the routing, account number, your home address or the address of your business that's associated with that bank account. All that information has to be available in order for me to initiate the wire. But I do get two-factor authentication, and I can initiate those wires from anywhere in the world. I don't have to go in the bank to do it. I just have to make sure I have all the information. So there's some benefits to that. I can also do, in our case, it's not just me. I can't just do it. There's actually an approval process, and my bookkeeper has the final approval. So I may be able to initiate the wire, and the bank may say, okay, that's great, but until my bookkeeper logs in, sees the wires there, and looks at the books and approves it, it isn't going anywhere. So it gives us that accountability, and as your company gets bigger and you start having employees have access to, like, in our case, gasoline credit cards, company credit cards, things like that, you want to be able to put that kind of stuff in place. So that's what I have. Hopefully that helps you out a little bit, Tim. I wouldn't worry about getting it initially in the beginning unless you can get something real cheap and it works real well for you to do wires. Chad, I appreciate it, man. I'm glad I could give you some good information. Nam, appreciate it. Oh, last year. Nam, you were at the mastermind, dude. Yeah. I'm glad it was good. Hopefully it was great. Guys, that mastermind rocked. Vinny closed that thing out last year and blew us all away. He actually beat me up and made me change my mind. And he made me also really do a gut check on what this company was going to be and who we were going to be, and be extremely focused on what was up. It was a life-changing event, I know, for me. So definitely appreciate it. And I'm glad, Nam, that you got some good stuff out of that as well. Lori, do you get this if you get China? Not really understanding that one, Lori. If you're going to China, do you need another course, or is this included? Lori, if you go to China, if you've signed up to go to China, we're going to have some pre-China webinars. This is something Jeff Eversole and Chad and Mark and Nam and those guys. Well, Mark can actually attest to it because we did a pre-China webinar with him, which we hadn't done with any other group, and it actually worked out really well, and we've improved upon it. A lot of this stuff would be some of the things that we would go over, but it's not going to be this virtual sourcing class will be in more detail than what you get before you go to China. So they could work together very well. If you did this first before you went to China, you would actually be better prepared than someone who didn't, because I'm going to go into a lot more depth, and we just don't have that kind of time to do a pre-China webinar. And then while we're in China, we spend so much time sourcing that our key focus is we came to China, and we just spent a lot of money to go to China and to source products. Or in this case, our next trip is combo trip. It's Thailand and China, and you can go to one or the other or both, no additional cost, same fee. So, this is kind of another thing of us adding more value to the trips. But that's going to be so much time spent sourcing, because you're there, you're meeting with sourcing companies, you're meeting with sourcing agents, you're meeting with import-export companies, you're meeting with manufacturers. You don't want to waste your time with that. We will do a lot of masterminding in the evenings, but it wouldn't hurt, and you'd be very well more prepared ahead of time. And this is, again, I constantly try to improve what we do, and I learn from the last group that we take out so that we can improve it and make it happen. So anyway, hopefully this has helped you guys out. Appreciate all the questions and everything. Jeff, you want to take it away, buddy? You guys have a good one. I got to go back and work with our new Chief Operations Officer, who used to be a customer. Oh, did I say used to? That was the wrong word. Still is a customer, and he went through the growing pains with us, and still has faith in us, because he sees that in 4 months we took a very, very challenging situation and have turned it into a diamond in the rough. That this company is nothing like what it was even 4 months ago. And a lot of people don't get to see it on the inside, and he really didn't get to see it on the inside, but he took faith and drove out here and saw what we were doing, and we changed his mind, and he came on board. So I'm excited. I'm going to go work with him, and you guys have a great day. I'll see you again in a week or two.
Awesome. Thanks, Alan. Thanks for all the great information, as always. Thank you guys for listening, and again, thanks for the great questions that not only help you, but help your peers. And the recording with this will be up most likely tomorrow. And thanks again. Have a great rest of your great day, great rest of your night, wherever you are, and we'll talk to you again really soon. Bye-bye now.